Right. So this is a very ancient question actually, that no doubt a lot is spoken about how the disciple should be to the teacher and how the teacher should be to the disciple, but the question of what expectations does the teacher have from the student or the disciple? If there is a guru, does the guru have any expectation from the shishya? Now you see, even the word guru is used too cheaply nowadays. We have gurus for everything. We have business gurus and love gurus, and technically speaking, a person who is like a mentor or like a teacher, if you're teaching a system, that doesn't make you a guru, that makes you an acharya. If you're teaching a text, you're teaching a process, that makes you an acharya. It does not necessarily make you a guru. A guru is that person who is connected to that higher consciousness or that inner dimension, the higher vibration, and can link you to it. So unless that person is capable of linking you to that inner dimension, that person cannot be a guru. That person can only be an acharya. And actually the acharya is also a little higher. There is also something called an upadhyaya, the person who explains the text. If you just give a sort of talk on the text or something, that person is an upadhyaya. An acharya can take you to the deeper nuances and a deeper understanding, teach you some rudimentary practices and things like that. This is in the Hindu yogic tradition. In the Jain tradition, the acharyas are also the gurus most of the time. But in the Hindu yogic tradition, the acharya is a step lesser, because what the guru does is inner work. What the guru does is the whole inner dimension of consciousness, and he or she can link you to that inner dimension. That is not very easy thing to do. Many people claiming to be gurus have no clue about that, or they are unable to do so. But that's because most people are not aware of the yogic tradition, they are not aware of the yogic practices. So a person who is not in parampara, a person who is not in lineage, it is not impossible that the person can become a guru. It is quite possible, but it's rather difficult, because the ability to link you to another dimension of consciousness, or the ability to link you to another vibrational possibility, usually happens within parampara. And a lot of the problem with the hatha yoga systems today, the asanas today, is that the parampara has been lost. The external postures remain, but the shakti that is transmitted with the postures, the teachers today don't know. So it has become gymnastics, it has become a fitness. But if it can be taught with the shakti, then just being in the asana is just as powerful as doing a meditational process or doing a breathing process. But almost 95% of what is taught in the name of hatha yoga today is outside parampara. So you don't even have acharyas, they are all upadhyayas, or even trainers, because that shakti has been lost. So unless there is that aspect of shakti, unless there is that aspect of lineage, the person cannot be a guru. So in that sense, what the guru is doing is not immediately accessible or understandable from a rational point of view. It is something that transcends reason. It is something that happens completely within another kind of consciousness, which normally we do not access in our waking consciousness, or in our dreams, or in our sleep. It is a different kind of consciousness that he or she can get you to access. Because literally, what does the guru mean? It means a person who is weighty. because of certain attainment, because of certain accomplishment, because of certain transformation that he or she has gone through, that person is now weighty, heavy with that attainment, heavy with that ability, and the guru has the potential or has the ability to share that with you. They can reach out and touch you and they can share that with you. So only those people should technically be the guru. And then there are many multiple deep level karmic issues involved with becoming a disciple, becoming a guru, and you know, many people are only too frantic in their desire to become a teacher. If only they knew. If only they knew the terrible burden and headache it is. So those people who are in a haste to become teachers, it is almost inevitably a sign that they should not become a teacher. The more reluctance a person has to become teacher, the greater and better they tend to be. Those who are overeager to become teachers, they are not. So that is the aspect of what is a guru to begin with. So what does this person expect from his disciples or from her disciples? Quite simply and frankly, nothing. Nothing personally. Because the relationship is an unfair relationship. The relationship is an unequal relationship, and the relationship is pathetically hierarchical. And there is no other way around it. It's not a democratic relationship. And this is not something that people today like to hear, because everybody is full of bullshit they learnt in their corporate training. Co-creation, co-equal. Those who teach are also learning. If you are still learning when you are teaching, at least in yoga you shouldn't be teaching. If you have not gone over the ground, you should not be talking about it. You should not have a map and say, I know the terrain, let's go. You should have traversed the terrain, then and only then you can say, I can help you through that. That part is very clear. So it is an inbuilt safeguard in yoga, I think, that actually the disciples can't really do anything for the teacher. They can do for their disciples. The value can only flow forward generationally. Yeah, you are supposed to support the guru and all that. I'm not getting into all that. That sometime later. The reciprocality and those kind of things. Or maybe sometime later in the talk I'll get into. So there is a thing that really personally there is nothing that you can do. But depending on what the teacher is, or what the lineage of the teacher has been, and what the system is. See, first of all, if the person is a guru in the authentic sense of the term, that is the person who can take you to liberation. That is the person who can teach you a system, who can teach you methodology, who can help you, guide you, mentor you, so that you come to the point where you can burn up your karma, you can be liberated, you don't need to come back again and again. You can be enlightened and then you can be liberated. So at the core, that is the deepest desire of the teacher, the guru, for the shishya, that my shishyas become liberated and enlightened. Again, you will see many organizations where the slightest flash of growth and talent in the disciple is firmly shot down. It's almost a test, you see, it's almost like a test of authenticity to me. Are the students, are the shishyas becoming more and more authentic as to who they are, or are they just becoming clones and very poor imitations of the main guy? And too many organizations, they just become robotic. They dress the same, they speak the same. I mean, not that Swami Chinmayananda used to do it, but it was very funny to see his people try to imitate him, because there's nothing funnier than hearing a Marwadi try to speak in a South Indian accent, And Chinmayananda had a thick Mallu accent. He traveled abroad a lot, so he also had an American drawl from somewhere. So it used to alternate. and, and these people used to imitate both. They used to imitate the American drawl and the Malu accent. And I would be like, he is not asking anybody to do that, but the projection, you see, the projection of this is the sort of, this is the best possible potential that I see in a human being. You understand, I've explained that before, that people, they latch into that field of possibility that is called the Kshetram, that field of transformation that is called the Kshetram, and they mistake the Kshetram that is flowing through the Guru for the limited human personality of the Guru. And from the day one, I have been very clear that Rohit is embodiment, Rohit is limitation, Sifu is the Kshetram. So what is flowing from the Kshetram is not to be confused with Rohit, because Rohit may have 1001 limitations, Kshetram doesn't. Now the Guru, if authentic, can teach you that, because you see, your body has a limit. No matter how superb it is, there is a limit. Your mind has a limit. It might be a fantastic mind, but even the mind ultimately will come across a boundary. Your emotions may travel a little bit more than your mind. You know, your emotions, but even your emotions are not unlimited. There is just one place inside, that inner dimension, the prana, the key, the energetic dimension, which is literally boundless, which is literally limitless. And the goal of a guru, if he is a real or she is a real person, since my guru is female, is to get you to that inner dimension, is to get you to experience that inner dimension, to get you to that space of freedom, to get you to realize there is something. See, we all know it. We all know that what makes a human being is not the body. Because as soon as we are dead, we don't even refer to the thing by name. We call it, the corpse. You know, so whatever it is, that essence of what makes you human is very obviously not your body, not your mind, not your emotions. There is something, and that is what we call that inner dimension. That is what we call that inner space. Most of us have no clue about it. It just plays out in us, and we have no idea how to consciously access that. We have no idea how to get there. We have no idea what to do, how to enlarge it, how to work with it, how to let that inner space guide and control our mind, our emotion, our body. And all authentic yogic paramparas, all authentic yogic lineages, that is what they do. No matter what their approach, no matter what their methodology, they take you to that inner space. They take you to that place from which you can function at your highest potential as a human being. So all these occult things and all that, about which I'll talk maybe sometime, siddhis, all these occult things and all that come as a consequence of doing certain processes, that you begin to realize there are capabilities within you that were never accessed. On the other hand, the real guru will never allow the person to run away with their imagination. You know, I don't encourage any kind of excitable talk. I don't encourage any kind of imaginations about attainments and visions that happened and all those kind of, which quite depresses a lot of people. Because they would prefer to live in that fairy tale zone. You know, there are many places where the guru is always a reincarnation of some famous master, and all the disciples are reincarnation of famous historical figures. Now, you know, you won't really get anything from that kind of place, because there is a whole mutual delusion society going on there. You won't really get anything from there, and it's quite depressing if you think of it. If all good gurus, all good teachers are reincarnations of somebody famous, it means that nobody is progressing spiritually. You know? Somebody should break through occasionally, become enlightened, and start teaching in their own right. If everybody is merely the reincarnation of somebody famous, you know, so people want Aurobindo to be the reincarnation of, you know, the Padma Sambhava and things like that. Probably true, but you know, not necessary. So the thing is, the first thing that the Guru wants for you or from you is your commitment to this thing, your commitment to becoming free. That's all they actually want of you. Now, the ways in which they process that is a human personality difference. Some people are kind, some people are not kind, some people are hands off, some people are very intrusive, some people will constantly do things to shake you up, some people will let you come to things on your own. That is entirely a human personality aspect. It has nothing to do with the expectation, but this is the expectation. Are you committed? Which is why, since most of these processes were taught only in sannyasic circles, renunciation, they wanted to see, that was your first test of commitment. Can you give up everything for this? You want to learn this, this is not an easy process. Can you give up everything for this? You have to leave your family behind, you have to leave your money behind. You got to come, you got to change your name, and then we'll teach you, because we don't have time to waste. If the person is not committed, we don't have. Now, I can understand that, it's a valid approach. But it's not the only approach in yoga. Yoga has not only been about renunciates. It has not only been about sannyasis. Ours is not a renunciate parampara. Ours is very much a parampara of living in the world, because it is an integral. So the first thing we say is, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to stop doing. You don't have to, no changes in diet, no changes in behavior, no changes in what you do. Whatever is no longer serving you automatically falls off, which is a slightly longer process, because, and then resistances come up, but that's also yoga. Yoga is infinite. Yoga is infinite in how it moves, in what it can be done. You see, sometimes out of impatience, that if I just intervene with this person and I block them in a certain way and I shove them in another way, they will move faster. Sometimes in impatience, the Guru will do that. And that is when the person starts losing their individuality, their originality. Because to me it is very clear, you have to, if you want to see the quality of a teacher, look at the quality of the disciples. Are the disciples all very efficient and effective clones of what is flowing from the foundation, or are they all authentic originals in their own way? And are they still able to communicate the truth of the parampara, the truth of the system in an authentic fashion? Because if the person is dramatically shifting and the person is becoming an imitation of somebody else, then that is a lessening. And that cannot be, because these processes always enlarge you, they do not diminish you. So the person has to be very authentic. The person has to become even more authentic, perhaps. One of the first things that happens in our 8 spiritual breaths is that, at least for the first year, everybody's temper goes up. Yeah, because the intensity develops within, the pranayama shifts the intensity, and your tolerance for nonsense also goes down a little bit, because you begin to see this is not serving, that is not serving, then it calms down. But also because our only expressions, our only understanding of intense states have been anger and sexual arousal. So when the body is intense, we think, okay, this is not a sexual situation, so I must be angry. It's not that. Your body is just becoming more intense. Your entire vibrational dimension is shifting. It takes a little time before people understand that. So in terms of how does it help to have somebody imitate you? It helps in efficiency. There are many systems where everything is laid out according to a script and you cannot deviate from the script. The transmission must be exactly according to the format. It's a standard template format, and the transmission is, that does not take into account human variation. And if it does not take into account human variation, it cannot be yoga. Then it is a process. It is not yogic anymore. It just becomes a psychological process or a bodily process or even a deep psychological process. It's not a yogic process, because a yogic process will take into account the human variation. See, because a person should not become a guru until his or her internal transformation has come to the point where you can look at another person and more or less scan them. Where are they? What is the nature of this person? What is the behavior of this person? What is the basic setting of this person? And then how do I shift this person a little bit? Now, these are all things that cannot be spoken of too easily, too early in the game, because it sounds absurd, but it's true. A genuine person can take one look at you and more or less figure out, okay, this is how the Vasana Samskaras has been flowing in the person. And so one of the big mistakes that happen is some kind of advice is given to a unique situation to one particular person, and that person makes a mistake of thinking that this is a blanket prescription. So that aspect of what is told or what is done with the intervention, it becomes very, very unique and personalized. Now, when you have millions of people, obviously that is not going to be possible. So some other process is happening there. Where everybody is being awakened at a rudimentary level. Everybody's intensity, everybody's energy is being raised at a rudimentary level, at a mass level. But that genuine thing that can happen, that genuine transformation or that genuine catalytic process that can happen, it's obviously not possible. It's obviously not possible. And I keep getting messages from people who've been left adrift because they see the person who has that kind of similar kind of knowledge or similar kind of thinking and also seems to know what is going on in the inner dimensions, and the intervening people do not know. So again, this is a responsibility that the senior people in the organization carry, that those you assign as teachers, they have maps, they don't have actual knowledge of the terrain. Too many people just have maps. Here, this is what you can more or less deal with, and they are taught 3-4 standard phrases. Surrender to the teacher, trust in the process, try harder. It's gone cold. Well, don't ask questions. There is a reason for it. I'm not saying always it is a valid reason, but you see, because of what I have explained, that the whole process is an interior process, and you don't need to convince a person who's, you can talk and talk and talk on Kundalini, and nothing helps as much as one example of the energy flaring up in you. After that, you don't need to talk about the Kundalini, because a person only wants to know, how do I get this under control? And until it flares, the transformation is not possible. That whole evolutionary shift is not possible. That whole movement of the human being, which is happening so slowly, and in yoga we know how to consciously take control of the evolution of the human being and transform the person physically, emotionally, mentally, and most of all in the inner dimension. And until the Kundalini rises, that doesn't happen. And you can talk about the Kundalini. There are 2,020,000 books about the Kundalini, and I can tell you about 20 of them, the people know what they are talking about. The other 2 million, they are just because the minute it happens, all questions cease, because then the questions become very practical questions. How do I keep this from overwhelming me? How do I keep it from disrupting my entire life? Which is again the reason why it used to be taught in ashrams. Because if something happened, then you could change the diet, make the person lie down, shut them up in a darkened hut. And there are multiple things that could be done which is easier to do in an ashram. Which is not to say it cannot be done by people living in the world. Of course it can be done. Second reason why they say don't ask so many questions is, if you are constantly asking questions, there is no time to process what is happening to you. And there is no training in working out your own answers to what is happening. If you stay with something long enough, the answer also comes. Whereas if the minute something happens, you immediately ask a question and you're given a standard template or even a very authentic answer, you might not gain that very, very valuable, incalculably valuable personal experience on the matter. Third reason is, how much knowledge can you accumulate? If you just take Vedanta, there are three schools of Vedanta. There is a dualistic school, there is the Advaitic school, and then there is one which says there is both of them can be managed. All of them have a minimum of 200 books. So we are talking 600 books just about Vedanta. Is it possible for one human being to gain, let me read all 600 books, then I'll take my call on what my path is? When you meet somebody who seems to have access to an inner dimension, why do you waste time questioning that person? Your only question should be, can you help me to access that? This is what happened to Sri Aurobindo. It happened to me also. I'm not claiming that I'm like Sri Aurobindo. I'm just saying that the experience is analogous. He was way more brilliant and knowledgeable in everything than his guru, but he saw that the man Lele, the Maharashtrian Brahmin from Pune, Lele, he had that ability, he had that thing that could connect him, and he just went. He didn't waste time over there. He didn't think that, oh, but I need a more brainy person. He just saw that this person, and this is the critical error that people make. Because even to come to a person with that ability is a rare thing, and if that person is meant to be a guru, man, lifetimes of karmic setting have to fall into place before you get that opportunity. It's called avsaram in Sanskrit, that moment when your life can transform, and most people bring all their conditionings to it at that moment. That is why they say don't question so much, because the answer is there. But that Vasundhara had a little episode where she felt that somebody was draining her of energy, and she more or less fixed it on her own. Now, she could have immediately got in touch with me and told me, help me fix it. Not that I didn't when I came to know it, but every single thing cannot be told to you. Growth happens when that insight emerges organically. It has to be something that if you just stay with a situation for enough time, if you stay with a process for enough time, if you stay with a question for enough time, whatever it is you need to learn emerges organically from that. Otherwise, it's not a yogic process. So sometimes when the teacher doesn't answer, it is because the guru knows that more value will be gained by the person working it out on their own rather than. Because like I said, I can talk the hind leg of a donkey about Kundalini. All I need to do is keep people 3 weeks in the breaths because of my good luck and the grace of the parampara, I have that ability. I can just turn people on like that. It's a exceedingly rare thing. That ability to turn the switch on is an exceedingly rare thing. And it's not it's a gift. That's all. So why would I talk about it? I'll just tell them, learn the breaths and then experience on your own. Beyond the point, you cannot accumulate knowledge about this, because this is not functioning from a mental level or even from an emotional level. That evolution that happens, that transformation that happens, it happens from a deep space of consciousness. It happens from an unlimited space of consciousness that completely transcends rationality and data. And when people keep asking questions, they're asking for data. And it is not a data answer, it is an energetic answer. It is an answer that comes and just touches you and shakes you to your core, which is the other reason. Many people think that you must be in a deeply loving relationship with the guru, you must be very attracted to the person. Not at all. In fact, it is better if there is some apprehension always. I'm not going anywhere, I'll just tell you because it's such a brilliant yogic answer. My own story, like I'm thinking about this whole thing of, okay, Santosh is my guru, and how did I end up with this lady as my guru? Because I'm basically an intellectual person, and those days I had the bad habit of sitting and going round and round in circles about anything. So I thought about it. So what does it mean that now that I am connected to her Kshetram and through her to the Parampara, and this whole energy is flowing through me and it is transforming me, and what does it mean? And then I came to this conclusion, I was aghast. So I go to her and, all bursting with my newfound insight. And I tell her, Santosh, actually the Guru is death to the disciple. No? She just looks at me in that typical manner of her and says, immortal answer, yes. That's all, that entire conversation. I think it took me 2 years to process that because you see, if you are going to connect the person to that infinite, what is there in an affirmation? The eternal, enduring, unchanging, everlasting. If you're going to, affirmation number 2, if you're going to connect that person to that domain of consciousness, then whatever is their limitations, you have to kill. Which is why we have Kali and Shiva and all as our gods, because there's a whole aspect of kill the nonsense, kill the rubbish. There's a whole aspect of whatever is limiting you, whatever is diminishing you has to go. Whatever is enlarging you remains. And the Guru is unfortunately a person like that. Not the personality of the Guru, because that is the human embodiment. Human embodiment comes with karmic limitation. We must not confuse the two, and this is the single greatest error that people make. Why disciples, even the Gurus, make that same mistake? They start confusing the Kshetram that is flowing through them with being not the top guys, not people like Aurobindo, Ramana Maharishi, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Vivekananda, not those guys. But some of the other people, they also start confusing, and that's when they start being called divine savior and Bhagwan and all. Ramana Maharishi used to laugh at that. Vivekananda, Ramakrishna and Aurobindo, of course, used to go up in flames when people would start projecting all this romantic nonsense on him. He would say there is embodiment is limitation. But yes, when you are in that other space, when you are in the Guru Kshetram, there is no limitation. And they knew the difference between the two. Which unfortunately nobody speaks very much about these things, because I think Gurus don't speak because they don't want that their disciple regard them with, many of them don't want that their disciples regard them with anything but awe and regard and that kind of stuff. And I was never interested in that. Unfortunately, I was not in a parampara which was interested in that. You see, this is probably the most difficult thing for the disciple, to accept the human limitations of the teacher, to accept the human limitations of the Guru. Like I once said, that Gurus can feel tired, they can feel angry, aggravated, all that, because that is the body, that is the mind. Those things come with inbuilt limitations. Your question is, when it is a spiritual process, when it is an energy process, what is that? Is the answer coming with limitation, or is the answer coming from that other place? It's an invariant test. Because really, what can you give back to that person? You cannot. Most of the time, by the time the teacher gets you the point where you are enlightened, he's dead. Or she's dead. It takes you that many years to drop your limitations, to enlarge, to expand, to come to that point. So, when you get to that point where you also become enlightened, then you break down. Oh my God, this person was carrying my useless carcass all these years and never said a word. Was carrying the weight of all my limitations, all my emotional conditionings, and never said a word. And then you start blabbering with gratitude. But by the time, usually, normally the person has checked out. So that's why I'm saying it's an inbuilt safeguard in yoga, that the value transmission keeps going forward. The value transmission keeps going forward, because what is the point of getting people to be enlightened, liberated? Okay, the great advantage, we do not have to come back into this miserable world, which is an immense advantage. We don't have this sorrow, pain, suffering of the world. Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, you have no right to scold your children and hold them to expectation. They didn't ask to be born into this world. You brought them into the world. You are responsible. which was not at all liked by his Indian audience, because the Indian audience, they want that the children feel eternally grateful to them, and he just cut the ground under their feet straight out. But that is not the point. You see, in yoga it is clearly understood that the human being is a transitory being. The human being is a mid stage of something that is evolving. The human being is a mid stage of the evolution of a certain kind of consciousness within the universe. So every person who becomes enlightened, every person who becomes liberated is pushing the evolution of the entire human race. And that's a very heavy responsibility. And most people don't speak about it because people are like, I don't want to be responsible for all of humanity, which is okay. I understand that. That's a perfectly valid, but that is the end point of the game. We are consciously pushing forward the entire process of evolution, especially those in the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. That is clearly understood. That is clearly understood that we are in very high stakes game. We are in transforming not only the consciousness and not only just burning up the karma, but we are transforming the way the mind is constructed. We are transforming the way emotions are constructed, and most of all, we are transforming the way the body, the human body. We are bringing the transformation down to the cellular level. It's very clearly understood. Even in our 8 spiritual breaths, it's very clearly understood. That every cell, how many times we have that? The light is there in every cell is a power plant in my body. It's very clearly understood that it is a process of complete transformation from the cellular level upwards. So the stakes are tremendous. The stakes are tremendous. Now people don't say this because most people, for understandable reasons, they come to a process, what is in it for me? And I have no problem with that. Selfish people are people you can get to, because once you show them the benefits, they plunge wholeheartedly into it. Selfless people who want to do samaj seva, they are dangerous, because they don't stick with the process long enough. So I have no problem with that. But you see, once you come to a certain stage of consciousness, automatically you cannot be a nuisance to society. Merely because of the way you now are, your emotions are settled, your mind is settled, you cannot be a danger to other people. Just because of that stability that you achieve, just because of that grounding that you achieve, you automatically become, if not a blessing, at least not a danger. And that is more or less enough, So I keep saying, pehle swayam uddhar, fir jaan bachi to jagat uddhar, yeah? First transform yourself. That is the greatest service you can do to the world. I shouldn't be saying that NGO people here, but ठीक है, She too, okay. You see, you don't have to abandon things. The problem was the way it has been taught for about 1,000 years now is everything has to be abandoned and only then you can attain, which is not true at all, which is not a yogic perspective at all. The point is, you are functioning at very much less than what you can. You are not functioning optimally. We have a way to teach you to function optimally. Now, because of the difficulty of that and because of the way the energy starts moving, they might ask you for things like obedience. They might ask you like, okay, just do what I am telling you and pakao mat. And there is a physical limit also, no? Suppose there have been days when I have 40 conversations. 40 people are talking. Now, even if it is just 5 minutes per person, so out of sheer self-defense for the poor body of the teacher, they create these interaction parameters. Otherwise, and you know what happens. Vasundhara has recently had an expectation. When people feel that little upsurge of energy in themselves, they become very needy and clingy to the person that they feel has created that upsurge. And that's also not. So those are, but really there is nothing. Really, this is what the teacher wants, that this is what I have experienced. I would like you to experience it also, because a yogic parampara is always in service of the larger consciousness. Whether you call it God or you call it Brahman or whatever, or the universe, it is in service to that larger consciousness, because when you have people like that, automatically society improves. And at a time, you look at the time when yoga was a commonplace in India, that is the time we were doing brain surgeries and plastic surgeries and casting metal that does not rust. Yeah, the iron pillar in Delhi, next to what is that, next to the Qutub Minar? Somewhere from South India, they bought it back up, and it's iron that doesn't rust. And nobody has a clue. And that is from the classical period of Indian culture. Nobody has a clue. How did you cast an iron pillar and it doesn't rust? There are 2, 3 others. There's one in Kerala that I know of. It's not even well made like that one. It's a very rough kind of thing. But it's there in the temple and it doesn't rust. Out, exposed to the elements 365 days of the year. So at a time when yoga was commonplace, the spill off to having people who are living life in a yogic way is too enormous. It goes into every aspect of life. It is a very, very big mistake, and today, especially because of the way that the culture is, that person is doing yoga, going to take sannyasa or what? Going to become, Actually, everything improves. Actually, everything becomes more dramatic, and you become much, much more impactful at what you're doing. Which is why Aurobindo began that book of his, The Life Divine, All Life is Yoga. And we are doing the Yoga Sutra talks, and nothing in the talks is saying that you need to give up everything. It's all about enlarging and expanding. You heard my talks on that. So the teacher, the guru would like that. The guru would like that. There is an old saying that the greatest victory for the teacher is to see the disciple surpass. Because if the disciple can push past what the teacher has been saying, then that is a victory for consciousness. It is not a personal victory for the parampara. It is not a personal victory that my school or my teaching has gained. It is a victory for entire consciousness. This person has opened up a new nuance. This person has opened up a new dimension. Now, we know that's not normally true, because human beings being human beings, to see somebody surpass you, it's very difficult to be genuinely happy. Most of the time we don't feel that, but it is, at least from a yogic perspective, that is the saying, that there is no greater pleasure than seeing your disciple surpass you. You must, if you're in the parampara, if you're in the lineage, whether it is expected of you or not, you must at least feel that, let me contribute something real to this. Let me bring some nuance to this. Let me bring some value to this. Let me bring some vibration to the kshetram that was not possible before I was present. If you can do that, then you have amply rewarded much more. Because expectation mein kya hai? The teacher, if it is an authentic teacher, knows all the troubles and turmoils that you are going through. All your limitations, all your arguments, the teacher knows, because he or she went through the same thing. What expectation they have from you? Really, there is no expectation. Then why do they share in this frantic manner? Because if consciousness does not evolve, it will devolve. And you know what happens when devolutionary consciousness happens? Wars, murders, concentration camps. Whenever you have the dark side of consciousness in control of society, you see what happens. So it's a very vital social hygiene factor that is being performed. And I have given up hope that social problems will be solved with only social initiatives. It is a consciousness problem. It is not a matter of getting resources. It is because the resources exist. We have so many government programs, and when Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister, he admitted in Parliament, that only 5 rupees out of every 100 rupees gets to the designated end user. 95 rupees get lost along the way. So it is not a factor of resources, it is a factor of kind of consciousness that is at play, the kind of habits that are at play. So a transformed consciousness is automatically something that is a social benefit. And we don't have enough people in that state. That is the problem, that is the core problem. Because again, when you come into a yogic state, you become, no doubt you become more kadak, you become more hard, and you have zero tolerance for nonsense, but at least you don't become exploitative, you don't become crude about the matter. So when you asked me that, I was a little taken aback, because I'm like, expectation of the disciple. Now, most teachers anyway look at the disciples as, oh dear God, now I have to teach these people. Yeah. And you know how people come to yoga? They come in the worst life circumstances, because they've had a family tragedy, because they've had financial loss. Only broken people come. Healthy people don't come, and that is the greater tragedy for the teacher. So the teacher, the guru, has to become a therapist, has to become a marriage counselor, has to become a financial advisor. Then we can put them into yoga. And well, that's the way it is. Until people break, they don't come. Because then for the first time in their life, they understand that we are not in charge. Our life is, so many random things can impact us, and for the first time they accept that we are not the center of the universe. That is why they come. So there is a sort of strangled, unconscious humility in that, which should be encouraged. Because we just live on faith. We just live on the hope that everything will continue, and all it takes is 2 seconds. All it takes is 2 seconds, and you have the heart attack or you have the accident, and that's it. All your plans have come to naught. So you need to go to that place where the problems of life, the unexpectedness of life will not knock you off base. So, while that is of course a psychological process, first of all it's a yogic process. It's a very deep. So that inner dimension is what you need, because body has limits, mind has limits, emotion has limits. Until you get to that inner dimension, you will always be at the mercy of things and events. Once you get to that inner place, things and events will continue to happen. You can't stop that, because that is the nature of the world. But you're not at their mercy. And that is the kind of blessing that cannot be ever rewarded, which is why everybody does come to say in the end, I can never repay my teacher. It was my arrogance that I thought I could repay, which is true. I openly admit I cannot ever repay what my teacher gave me. What my guru gave me, I cannot repay. All I can do is transmit that. What I have got, I can transmit. So that's just a nuance. Now about the practical ways in which the relationships run, all right, let's not get into that, because that upsets people. There are practical ways in which, that's not an expectation, those are just the rules of engagement. They're quite a different thing. Your question was not about the rules of engagement. I'll talk about the rules of engagement sometime. You guys know, because you guys are my disciples. I've explained it to you. It's better when the person formally asks to be a disciple that you tell that, instead of saying in public domain. Normally it's not said in public domain. But in expectations terms, actually the question quite kind of flummoxed me a little bit, because I had never thought about it. So in a way it is good that you asked it. Yeah, but certainly quality of disciples is one unvarying test. Ramakrishna Paramahansa is supposed to have had 50 enlightened disciples. Nobody ever before, nobody ever after. And you have people like Vivekananda, and they say Swami Brahmananda was probably a greater, even Sri Aurobindo said that Swami Brahmananda's attainment was probably greater than Swami Vivekananda. Now, how do you make a man who's greater than Vivekananda? It's unthinkable. Or Swami Avedananda, whose nickname was Kali, so you know, you know what kind of person that was. Or that Master Mahasaya, that the person who wrote what is that? The life of Sri Ramakrishna. He was also a stature that you cannot even dream of. And all of them are unique. Even Ramana Maharishi, the kind of people who used to gather around him, all of them were unique. The kind of people who used to gather around Aurobindo, you can instantly make out when the personality just becomes stronger and they start growing, they start enlarging. They don't start becoming cut into one template. They don't just become imitations of each other. And too many places that becomes the same. They all even cut their beard at the same length and like I said, the imitation of the accent of the teacher, which is, anyways. But to me, that has always been, it has been an invariant rule that you can see whether, anyway, a person like me, we don't look at those external factors as to how big the organization is. You just look at the Shakti of the person. What is the Shakti flowing from the person and how authentic is that? Because there are certain manipulative Shaktis also that people have, which is not a spiritual Shakti. If it is a spiritual Shakti, there is no way that it can be mistaken for anything else. But yeah, the disciples, the kind of disciples is always a big factor. Because then you know that genuine shift is happening in the environment because of the kind of people there. Yeah? Okay? Sarvam Shivamaya.